Welcome back. And with this, we will cover the question of career guidance as governance instrument. So, career guidance is often seen as a service, but it's much more than that. And we will talk about this in more details. It helps individuals navigate choices across education and work through their lives. From a governance perspective, it plays a critical coordination role, of course. By improving information and supporting decision making, it directly influences how people move through the system. This reduces mismatch and dropouts. It helps align education with labor market needs. So everything is quite simple. So ultimately, career guidance contributes to broader public goals such as inclusion, efficiency, and economic development, of course. Career guidance is not peripheral. It's a core governance tool in modern education system. This slide shows that career guidance works as a system of interdependent factors, not as isolated interventions. On the left, we see learner-facing outcomes, informed choices, reduced dropouts, and equity. These are the most visible effects, but they depend on what happens in the system. In the center, adaptability skills and recognition of prior learning acts as key connectors. They translate individual capabilities into system-relevant outcomes. At the bottom, system-level factors, such as system alignment and employee engagement, they assure that guidance is actually linked to labor market realities and needs. On the right, we see the forward-looking dimensions: lifelong learning, technological change, and education to employment transition. The arrows are important also. They show that these elements mutually reinforce each other. Strong links indicate direct effects, dashes lines show weaker but still relevant connections. And the key message here is that effective career guidance requires coherence across all these dimensions, or otherwise impact remains limited. Let's look at the example of how to establish a national career guidance framework. The key idea here is that career guidance must be integrated across systems, education, labor market, and policy. The four pillars show that impact only emerges when these areas are aligned and coordinated. Career guidance works best as part of a coherent national system, not in isolation. This slide shows why reform is urgent. We face four key pressures: high mismatch between training and jobs, significant dropout rates, rapidly changing skill demands, and limited access to guidance, especially for adults. Individually, these are serious challenges. Together, they create a systemic problem. The key point is that a national career guidance framework is not optional. It is a direct response to these pressures. Let's outline a structured 5-phase reform pathway over 3 years. We start with diagnosis and mandate to define the problem and secure political backing. Then move to design and consultation, ensuring stakeholder alignment. Phase 3 focuses on piloting and testing before moving into scaling and embedding, where successful approaches are institutionalized. Finally, we evaluate and sustain to ensure long-term impact. Across all phases, 5 principles guide the process: evidence-led, co-design, equity-focused, adaptive, and institutionally embedded. Reform is a sequence, iterative and long-term, not one-off intervention. The first phase is about building the foundation for reform. It starts with a diagnostic audit, understanding what exists, where gaps are, and how the system performs. In parallel, it is crucial to secure political mandate and alignment across ministers. Without this, reform will not move forward. We then establish a national advisory board, bringing together key stakeholders and expertise. And finally, we define a clear vision and measurable success indicators, linking guidance to concrete outcomes. So strong reforms start with clarity, ownership, and evidence. Phase 2 focuses on designing the system in detail and building consensus. First, we develop the national framework. So we define who gets access, setting standards, aligning with qualification systems, of course. Second, we design the workforce strategy, ensuring there are qualified practitioners and clear professional pathways. Third, we establish a labor market information system to guidance. So guidance is based on real up-to-date data, what labor market needs now. Finally, we run broad stakeholder consultations to validate and improve the design. This phase ensures the reform is technically sound and broadly supported before implementation. Phase 3 is about testing the system in practice. We start by selecting diverse pilot sites, ensuring representation and proper resourcing, of course. Then we train the first cohort of practitioners and introduce tools and platforms. A key element is continuous monitoring and iteration, collecting data and adapting the framework based on evidence, of course. On the right, you see typical risks such as resistance, weak data, or funding gaps, each requiring proactive mitigation. Pilots are not just testing, they are learning and adjustment mechanisms before scaling. Phase 4 is where reform becomes system-wide and irreversible. First, the framework is anchored in legislation, ensuring rights, standards, and sustainable fundings. Second, we move to national rollout, scaling practitioner capacity and professionalizing the field. Third, guidance is embedded into quality assurance system, linking it to inspection and funding. This is critical for sustainability. Finally, of course, a public awareness campaign ensures uptake by learners, employers, and institutions. So, scaling is not just expansion, it is institutionalizing into rules, systems, and public expectations. Phase 5 ensures the reform is sustained and continuously improved. First, we conduct an independent national evaluation, measuring real outcomes such as completion, employment, and equity. Second, we institutionalize improvement, creating permanent structures and feedback loops. Third, we secure long-term financing, which is critical to survive political cycles. On the right, the KPIs show that success looks like better completion, reduced mismatch, wider access, full professionalization, and high user satisfaction. And sustainability depends on evidence, institutions, and stable funding, not just initial reform success. Let's again take a moment for reflection. How is career guidance organized in your country actually? Can you reflect on this? And are all 10 factors that were mentioned before implemented and working well, or are there any missing aspects? So you are more than welcome to reflect yourself or to share your reflections with us during live Q&A sessions. Thank you so much and see you later.